My twins stole my identity and wrecked my credit, so I exposed her lies at her wedding. For as long as I can remember, our lives were a study in contrasts. We looked identical, yet we were mirror opposites. I was Emily, the responsible one, the one who did her homework, saved her money, and always made sure to be home before curfew. My parents called me their rock. My sister, on the other hand, was Ava. She was a whirlwind of charm and chaos, a supernova of charisma that sucked all the attention and all the resources into her orbit. Our parents called her their free spirit. The truth was, she was selfish, manipulative, and had a talent for leaving a trail of destruction for me to clean up. This dynamic started early. When we were 8, Eva decided she wanted to be a gymnast, but quit after 2 weeks because it was too hard. She then proceeded to steal the money our parents had set aside for her lessons, a considerable sum, from my piggy bank, claiming it was for a special secret project we would do together. The project never materialized. When our parents inevitably found out, she blamed me, saying I'd influenced her. Our parents, blinded by her tears and fake remorse, grounded me for a week and simply told Eva to be a little more thoughtful. It was a pattern that would repeat itself for years. In high school, Eva was the popular one, the life of every party. I was the one who studied, who got good grades, who had a part-time job. I remember once, she got a D in her physics class, and a college application was due the next day. Panicked, she stole my meticulously completed physics homework and submitted it as her own. The teacher caught on, but Eva, with her practice sob story, convinced him that she had been under immense stress and that I had willingly lent it to her to help. I was the one who was called into the office and lectured about academic integrity. But the ultimate transgression, the one that shattered my world and set this story in motion, was when she stole my identity. I was 25, working 2 jobs and saving every penny to put a down payment on a small apartment. It was a dream I had worked for relentlessly. I had a spreadsheet, a budget, and a 5-year plan. I was so close. The day I went to the bank to get pre-approved for a loan, my whole world came crashing down. The bank manager sat me down, a look of profound pity on his face. "I'm sorry, Miss Johnson," he said gently, "but based on your credit score, we can't approve you for a loan. In fact, it's quite alarming. You have multiple maxed-out credit cards and several unpaid medical bills, all in the last 3 years." My stomach dropped. I stared at him, my mind reeling. My credit score was perfect. I hadn't opened a new credit card since I was 20, and I certainly didn't have any medical bills. I paid everything on time. Panic set in. The manager pulled up a detailed report. As I looked at the long list of fraudulent charges, a designer handbag, a trip to the Bahamas, a brand new laptop, my heart pounded in my chest. And then, I saw it. A charge from Eva's boutique, a store that didn't exist, but that Eva had often talked about wanting to open. It wasn't my name on the credit cards, it was mine. She hadn't stolen my identity, she had become me. I remember standing in the middle of that bank lobby, the polished marble floor suddenly feeling like quicksand. The low hum of the air conditioning was a distant buzz, and the polite clatter of keyboards from the tellers seemed to mock my shattered dreams. The bank manager's face was etched with a pity I couldn't stand, and I wanted to rip the credit report from his hands and pretend none of it was real. But the long list of maxed-out credit cards, unpaid medical bills, and fraudulent charges was real. The damning proof was there right in front of me, a meticulous ledger of Eva's destruction. I numbly walked out of the bank and into the bright, unforgiving afternoon sun. I didn't get in my car. I just stood there on the pavement, my mind an empty, static-filled room. The old Emily would have collapsed in tears. She would have called our parents, hoping for comfort and a solution. But the old Emily was dead. She had been for years, chipped away piece by a lifetime of her sister's selfishness. This was the final, fatal blow. All I felt was a cold, hard resolve, a furious fire that was not for tears but for action. I went straight to her apartment. It wasn't a small, budget-friendly place like the one I had saved for. It was a stylish, 2-bedroom loft in a trendy part of town, paid for by the generous allowance our parents gave her, and a complete lack of financial responsibility. She could afford to live this way because she hadn't been working 2 jobs to save for a down payment. She hadn't been meticulously tracking every dollar. She had been living my life on my credit. I pushed past her and stood in the middle of her living room, a stack of papers trembling in my hand. The place was a whirlwind of half-packed boxes and expensive, mismatched furniture. A half-finished glass of champagne sat on a pristine coffee table. It was the apartment of someone with no worries, no future to plan for, and no consequences to face. "Eva," I said, my voice barely a whisper, What is this? I laid the credit report on her coffee table, pointing to the fraudulent charges, the maxed out cards, the medical bills. She glanced at it, a flicker of fear in her eyes, quickly replaced by her signature dismissive smirk. She picked at a loose thread on her shirt, a practice move she used when she was trying to appear bored and unbothered. "Oh, that old thing," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Yeah, I was going to tell you about that. I needed some cash for a business venture, you know. It's a new opportunity. I'll pay it all back, eventually." My blood ran cold. The sheer audacity of her statement was a physical assault. She wasn't just admitting it, she was downplaying it. As if she had borrowed a cup of sugar, not stolen my entire financial future. The casual way she dismissed the mountain of debt and the years of my hard work was a slap in the face. "Eventually, Eva, my credit is destroyed. I can't get a loan. I can't even rent a car. My dream of buying a home is gone," I screamed, the years of suppressed anger and resentment finally boiling over. The sound of my own voice, so loud and raw, surprised me. It was the voice of a person who had finally had enough. She rolled her eyes, a gesture so familiar it felt like a brand on my soul. "Oh, Emily, don't be so dramatic. You'll bounce back. You're the responsible one, remember? Besides, you had all that money in your savings, you can just use that." That was the last straw. She had no remorse, no empathy. She looked at me not with guilt, but with impatience, as if I was interrupting her day with a trivial complaint. She had taken everything I had worked for, and saw no issue with it. She was suggesting I use the money I had saved for the down payment to clean up her mess. "You're a sociopath," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so deep it felt like it would tear me apart. "You've been doing this our whole lives. You take, and you expect me to clean up your mess. Not this time." Eva laughed, a hollow, cruel sound. "Oh, really? What are you going to do, Emily? Tell everyone? They'll just think you're jealous. You've always been in my shadow. Now get out of my apartment. I'm busy planning my wedding." The wedding. The thought struck me with the force of a hammer. Her perfect fairy tale wedding to Daniel, a kind, wealthy man from a prominent family who adored her. He saw her as a princess, a flawless angel. He had no idea the monster he was marrying. And in that moment, seeing her smug, unbothered face, something inside me snapped. "You're right," I said, my voice low and dangerously calm. "I am going to do something. And you're not going to like it. This isn't just about a credit score anymore. This is about justice." She scoffed, completely unfazed. "Just leave, Emily." As I walked out of her apartment, the door slamming shut behind me, I made a vow. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was a war. I was going to find a way to get my life back, but not before I made sure she paid for what she did. And I knew the perfect place to do it, her wedding. The one day in her life that she couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. I was going to expose her lies and show Daniel and his family the true face of the woman they were welcoming into their lives. The time for being the good twin was over. The next few weeks were a blur. The rage and betrayal had cooled into a focused, methodical plan. I wasn't going to just make a scene. I was going to systematically dismantle her lie. I knew Eva would lie her way out of anything I said, so I needed proof. Irrefutable, undeniable proof. My first step was to go to the police. I filed a report for identity theft. The process was a bureaucratic nightmare. I spent hours filling out forms, talking to different officers, and providing documentation. They told me it was a long process, that it could take months, even years to resolve. The detective I spoke to, a tired-looking woman with a kind face, told me, "These things are difficult, especially when it's a family member. They usually just settle it between themselves." Her words were a confirmation of my worst fear. The official channels were too slow, too lenient, and too forgiving for a monster like Eva. I needed a different kind of justice. I needed something that would be immediate, public, and unforgettable. The wedding date loomed, a dark star in my personal calendar. It was just a month away. I had to work fast. I knew the credit report alone wouldn't be enough. Eva would just cry and say it was a misunderstanding. She was a master of performance. I needed more. I needed to show not just the result of her actions, but the pattern of her behavior. I started a meticulous catalog of every injustice. I pulled out old photo albums, remembering the time she stole the money from my piggy bank. I found the old bank statements and traced the money our parents had given her for gymnastics that never materialized. I remembered the exact day she stole my physics homework and the lecture I got from the teacher. I even dug up an old email from a friend who had witnessed Eva taking the money I had saved for a car repair and using it for a trip to Las Vegas. The email was a perfect piece of evidence, a third-party account of her selfishness. The hardest part was contacting Daniel's family. I had to do it. The wedding was my stage, but they were the audience who mattered most. I needed to make sure they were primed to believe me. I found Daniel's mother, a woman named Catherine, on social media. She was a formidable woman, a matriarch who ran a charitable foundation. I knew she valued honesty and integrity above all else. I wrote a long, agonizing message explaining everything. I didn't send it immediately. I knew the timing had to be perfect. I would wait until the day of the wedding, just hours before the ceremony, to send it. I didn't want to give Eva time to craft a counter-narrative. I wanted to sow the seed of doubt at the last possible moment. I spent sleepless nights rehearsing my speech. It was a soliloquy of a lifetime, a final public act of catharsis. I would start by being the good twin, the loving sister. I would tell stories, just like our father would, but my stories would have a different ending. I would weave a tapestry of her lies, from childhood to adulthood, culminating in the identity theft. The climax would be the credit report, a physical manifestation of her deceit. I knew it would cause a scene. I knew it would be painful. But the thought of her standing there, a beautiful bride, a vision of purity and grace, while I was silently drowning in her debt, was unbearable. There was a moment of doubt, a dark night where I sat alone in my small, lonely apartment and wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was this really justice? Or was it just a bitter, selfish act of revenge? The old Emily, the one who always cleaned up the mess, whispered in my ear, "Just let it go. It's not worth the pain. You'll be the villain. You'll be the one they all blame." And sometimes in the deep, quiet parts of my mind, a little part of my conscience still hopes for my family to be whole again, for us to somehow find peace. What do you think? Am I wrong to go through with my plan? I want to know your thoughts in the comments to have a well-rounded perspective. But then I thought of the bank manager's face, the thousands of dollars in medical bills, racked up in my name, that I would have to spend years paying off. The designer bag, the trip to the Bahamas. Eva's smug, unbothered smirk. The whisper of the old Emily was drowned out by the roar of the new one, the one who was finally standing up for herself. This wasn't about revenge. This was about survival. I had to save myself from the monster who was wearing my face. The day was everything Eva had ever dreamed of. It was a beautiful summer afternoon at a sprawling vineyard, the kind of place you only see in movies. The sun was a warm, golden blanket, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming roses and expensive perfume. The long tables were draped in white linen, adorned with intricate floral arrangements. A string quartet played a delicate melody, and guests, dressed in their finest attire, mingled with glasses of champagne in hand. Eva was a vision in a white lace dress, her hair in an elegant updo, radiating a false light that fooled everyone in the room. She looked like an angel, a perfect bride, and every single person there believed it. Daniel, handsome and beaming, looked at her with pure, unadulterated love. He was everything she wasn't, kind, honest, and truly good. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I stood in the back, a silent observer, a ticking time bomb. I wore a simple black dress, a stark contrast to the vibrant pastel colors of the other guests. I felt invisible, a ghost in the background, which was exactly how I had felt my entire life. But today, I was here to be seen. Today, I was here to be heard. As the ceremony concluded and the reception began, I watched her glide through the crowd, accepting congratulations, her laughter ringing out like a melody. I felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of the old Emily. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe I could fix my credit and move on. Maybe this was too far. But then I saw my parents, standing proudly by Eva's side, their faces a picture of complete happiness. And I remembered the bank manager's face, the list of fraudulent charges, and her callous laughter. My guilt evaporated, replaced by the cold, righteous fury that had been my constant companion for the past month. No, she deserved to be exposed. She deserved to feel a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. When it was time for the toasts, Daniel's best man stood up and gave a heartfelt speech. Then a few friends, and finally our father, who spoke of his two beautiful daughters and how proud he was. He looked directly at me for a moment, a brief, fleeting look of apology in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. A look that said, "I know what she did, but you're a good person, you'll get over it." It was the same look he had given me when I was 8 and grounded for her actions. I knew then that there was no turning back. This was for me. For the 8-year-old girl who had her savings stolen. For the high school student who was blamed for her sister's cheating. For the young woman who had her life's work erased in a moment of selfish greed. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The murmur of the crowd fell silent as I took the microphone from our father, my hands shaking. The weight of it was immense, a small black object holding the power to change everything. Eva looked at me, a sharp, angry look in her eyes. "What are you doing, Emily?" she mouthed silently, her smile fixed but her eyes like daggers. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm Emily, Eva's twin sister. I've been asked to say a few words about my sister, the beautiful bride." I took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of faces, all of them expectant, smiling, and completely oblivious. Eva has always been a free spirit, as our father said. She's always wanted what she couldn't have, and she's always been willing to do whatever it takes to get it. She's a brilliant person, in her own way. She's a master of illusion, a professional at creating a perfect world for herself, even if it comes at a cost to others, specifically, me. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. Daniel looked confused, and Eva's face was now a mask of pure fury. She was beginning to understand. "For years," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "Eva has lived a life of luxury and freedom, and I've always been left to pick up the pieces. From my stolen piggy bank as a child, to my college homework which she submitted as her own, to my car breaking down because she took all my savings for a trip to Las Vegas. I have spent my entire life in her shadow, picking up the pieces of her chaos." The murmurs grew louder. Daniel's mother, the formidable Catherine, leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on Eva. Her expression was one of shrewd suspicion. My email had done its job. But the most recent and most devastating of Eva's adventures came 3 months ago. I was applying for a loan to buy a home, a dream I had worked tirelessly for. I was denied because, as it turns out, my credit score was in the gutter. It was because someone had maxed out 6 credit cards, defaulted on student loans, and racked up thousands of dollars in medical bills in my name. And that someone was my twin sister. The silence that followed was deafening. Gasps filled the air, and forks clattered to plates. Daniel's face went white, his jaw going slack in profound disbelief. Eva stood up, her face a furious crimson. "Emily, stop!" she shrieked, her voice echoing across the vineyard, high-pitched and hysterical. "This is insane! She's lying! She's always been jealous of me!" I ignored her, pulling a small, laminated paper from my purse. It was a copy of the fraudulent credit report, with my name and a list of all the charges. I held it up for everyone to see. "This is the proof," I said, my voice trembling now, but with emotion, not fear. "She didn't just steal a few things. She stole my identity, my financial future, my dreams. This isn't jealousy. This is a cry for justice." "This is not true," Eva screamed, grabbing her beautiful bouquet of flowers and throwing them on the floor. "She's trying to ruin my wedding! I'm calling security!" Daniel's mother, the formidable woman from before, stood up, her voice, cold and steely, cut through Eva's frantic protests. "Is this true, Eva?" she asked, her eyes narrowed. Eva's composure finally broke. "No, it was a misunderstanding. She's overreacting. I was going to fix it," she cried, her voice cracking as the facade crumbled. But it was too late. Daniel's face was a study in profound shock and betrayal. He looked from me to her, finally seeing the truth in my words and the lie in her protests. He walked slowly to her, and I saw his hand on his wedding ring. My revenge was complete. The chaos I had unleashed was beautiful and terrifying, a firestorm of deserved comeuppance. I had taken back my life, and she was watching her perfect illusion crumble before her eyes. The wedding ended in utter chaos. The beautiful, fairy tale setting was now a scene of utter destruction. Daniel's family, mortified and furious, ushered him away from the vineyard, his mother Catherine, giving me a single, hard nod of approval as they left. She hadn't said a word to Eva, and that was a far more damning condemnation than any shouted accusation could have been. Eva, in a fit of wild rage, lunged at me, only to be held back by our horrified parents. She screamed and cursed, her beautiful wedding dress now a symbol of her lies. The guests dispersed in a stunned silence, their whispers and judging glances following me as I walked out. I had done what I set out to do, but the feeling wasn't one of pure satisfaction, but of a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. The fight was over, but the work was just beginning. I left the vineyard, leaving my family and the wreckage of Eva's life behind. The drive home was quiet, a stark contrast to the screaming and chaos I had just left. I expected to feel triumphant, to feel a sense of overwhelming victory. But all I felt was emptiness. The years of resentment and betrayal had been a heavy weight, and now that it was gone, I felt hollowed out. The next day, I went to the police station and, with the help of a pro bono lawyer I had found online, I filed a formal report for the identity theft. It was a long, arduous process of sorting through paperwork and meeting with lawyers. I provided them with all the evidence I had, including the damning credit report and a list of charges. With my legal action, I was finally able to begin the process of clearing my name. It would take time, but the first step had been taken. Eva was now facing the consequences of her actions, not just in her personal life, but legally. The most difficult part of the aftermath was confronting my parents. They were furious, not at Eva, but at me. "How could you do this to your own sister?" my mother cried. "You ruined her life. She's going to have to pay for all of this." It was in that moment that I realized their enabling behavior would never change. They were incapable of seeing the truth, so consumed by their vision of Eva as the free spirit that they could never see the monster beneath the facade. I did something I should have done years ago. I cut Eva out of my life completely. I blocked her number, her email, her social media. I even told my parents, with a newfound firmness in my voice, that I would not tolerate her presence in my life, and that if they chose to continue enabling her, I would cut them off as well. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and accusations of destroying the family, but I held my ground. I had learned the hard way that my self-worth was not worth sacrificing for someone else's convenience. Today, a year later, my life is still a work in progress. My credit score is slowly improving, thanks to the legal team I hired and my meticulous efforts to contact creditors. My apartment dream has been postponed, but I'm back on track, saving every penny with a renewed sense of purpose. I've reconnected with old friends and found a small, tight-knit community that values honesty and respect. I no longer feel the weight of Eva's shadow. The silence from her and my family is a strange kind of freedom. It's a quiet that allows me to hear my own thoughts, my own dreams, my own voice. I found peace not by destroying someone else's happiness, but by refusing to let them destroy mine. By finally standing up for myself and demanding justice, I reclaimed more than just my identity. I reclaimed my life, my dignity, and the right to build a future that is truly my own, a future free from the toxic lies and endless cleanup of my twin. It wasn't revenge that set me free. It was the truth.